What is the greatest EA NHL video game of all time? Well, today I am going to give my answer to that particular question. I want to shout out a friend of the channel by the name of Mr. Altex down there, twitch.tv/Haltex, who I saw posting a bunch of these. I'd never heard of bracket fights before, but he gave his answer to this question. I'll let you follow him on Twitter to find out his answer. But I figured, about a month and a half ago, I played through essentially all of these games again. We had a charity event in December where pretty much on a nightly basis I went through one or two games on each of those nights. So they are all fresh in the memory. Why not take advantage of that and go through this particular bracket? Now, I will say, I believe if you're not in presentation mode, there's a shuffle option to change it all up. I'm pretty sure I'd get to the same answer regardless. But yeah, we're going to go through this. This is going to be fun. People are going to be mad at my final answer because I think I already know what my final answer is, but it's going to be a good time. Let's start off in the top left. It's NHL 97 against NHL 14, and let me tell you something, folks. NHL 97 is trash. In terms of how that game has aged, absolute trash. The PlayStation 1 era, is very, very hit or miss. That game has aged terribly. I might have some complaints about NHL 14. We might get to those a little bit later on, but by default, NHL 14 wins hands down. It would take a pretty bad game to outcrap NHL 97. I don't like this matchup at all because it's pitting two of my favorites, damn it. Two of my favorites. The PlayStation 2 original Xbox era, my favorite, hands down, of the EA NHL series. Those games you just don't miss. NHL 05, though, while it might be the game that I played the most as a kid, I played a lot of NHL 05 that year because, well, the lockout was a thing and there was really no other way to experience hockey, so I played a ton of it. NHL 05 has not aged as well as I remember. It is a very weird in-between of NHL 04, and NHL 06, obviously. Two very fondly remembered games, but two games that had pretty drastically different styles. So NHL 05 is kind of the in-between that doesn't quite work as well as either of the other two. While NHL 03 takes what was another weird transition period that was NHL 02. Now, NHL 01 is phenomenal. 02 is a bit weird, also looks a bit funky. It's got a weird filter effect on it, so it's not the prettiest game. NHL 03, though, was where they wanted to go. So because one is a bridge game and one is kind of the next step that they were looking to take, it's NHL 03 that wins. And I'm so sorry to NHL 05. Marcus Nazzle on the cover. It will forever hold a special place in my heart. But NHL 03 is the better game at this point in time. Here we go. NHL 19 and NHL 15. Now, you might be saying, well, what version of NHL 15 are we talking about? And that is the very important question because that decides how this conversation goes. I'm going to talk about both. NHL 19 in and of itself it's a fine hockey game, basically. There's really not too much to really add about NHL 19, I should say, because this era of these games, for the most part, have been pretty damn similar, haven't they? So NHL 19 is just kind of baseline. It's a fine hockey game. 15, if we're talking Xbox 360, PS3 era, tremendous game. And the reason, along with the likes of NHL 14, why people have such fond memories for that era, I still think, those memories have only been amplified in terms of just kind of how mid the games have been lately, so it makes that seem even better than it was. They were good. I don't know if they were amazing. But it's the big question of next-gen NHL 15, which, of course, had zero features. Most stuff was stripped out. Be a Pro was almost worse than it was when the mode was first introduced. NHL 15 on the next-gen version was pretty bad, with the exception of the gameplay and the presentation. It was the first year of the NHL on NBC license coming in. I have always stood by it. In terms of a video game, like gameplay experience, NHL 15 is a fine hockey game. It's just you have no features. But because I'm considering two different versions of the game, I am going with NHL 15 over 19. That might be controversial. Some people might hate that. And you know what? I am okay with it, given the circumstances, because again, the prior gen version of NHL 15 is okay. But yeah, NHL 19, you had World of Chell. That was the big thing. Not a great thing. Let's be honest. We move on. NHL 22 versus NHL 94. Poor NHL 22. To be stuck here, this is this is a rough spot. Of course, it was the first year of the Frostbite engine. We're in the second year of said Frostbite engine, and the first year of X Factors as well, which wholly controversial topic, especially in the competitive scene, is NHL 22 and X Factors in general, whereas NHL 94 is still acclaimed as one of the greatest games of all time. And it is. However, the Super Nintendo Genesis era of games, like NHL 94, there wasn't too much in terms of improvement. Once they got the formula down with 94, up through 96, it's all pretty similar. 94, some argue 95, of course, being the gem. It would be sacrilege to not put 94 over NHL 22, so I'm not going to be that controversial. It is 94. Fuck. So both of these games suck. I don't know what the hell is going on with my hair. Both of these games suck. It's the best way to say it. O2, like I said, has a really weird filter on it, noted for the breakaway cam, and it was the first year that had the cards feature, which was almost like a super early primitive version of Ultimate Team, but not really. Essentially, every player in the game had a bronze, silver, or gold tier card. You could earn points and open packs by just playing the game. And essentially, if you got a card middle of the game, you could say, all right, third period, I'm going to boost Mario Lemieux to star level for the entire period by using his bronze card. Silver would be 2 periods, gold would be third. And of course, they had Easter eggs as well to the card system and stuff like that. But for the most part, it had its issues, I think, is the best way to kind of sum it up. Whereas NHL 98, or excuse me, 99, I should say. I wish I was talking about NHL 98. NHL 99 has aged terribly. Just absolutely terribly. At the time, and it's very difficult to view certain games at the time, might not have been all that bad. It's ratings, its game scores through reviews were actually pretty good for the most part. It's 8s out of 10, stuff like that. It has aged absolutely dreadfully. That 97 are complete avoids for me. NHL 02 wins by default. It's not a bad game, certainly. NHL 2000 versus our current title in NHL 23. NHL 2000 at the time was pretty good. I mean, you had your season mode for the first time. It was really starting to turn into franchise, but it wasn't quite there yet. Franchise modes in NHL weren't really franchise modes until NHL 04. Yeah, it was the first game that had the pairing of Jim Hughes and Bill Clement on commentary, but it really doesn't have too much going for it upon hindsight. Again, at the time, the step forward was probably decent from 99. Even with hindsight, the step above 99 was decent. It's NHL 23. NHL 23 definitely wins out over NHL 2000. It's not even... There's no discussion necessary here. 0. It's NHL 01 over NHL 20. Again, NHL 20 isn't inherently like a dreadful game. I don't think really any of these NHL games have been dreadful. NHL 20 probably most remembered for the year that we saw the NBC license go. So this was the first year of James Cybulski and Ray Ferraro, the new score bug on the bottom. Expansion mode, though, for the first time in franchise, which was great. However, and apparently, I guess this is the year they added contextual shooting as well, which NHL 01's amazing. From a pure gameplay perspective, when you hear a lot of people my age or older waxing poetic about this era, and I'm talking the PS2 or Xbox version, not the PlayStation version, gameplay-wise, like this is it. this kickstarts that generation of '01 to '06 that it's pretty much lights out the entire way through. Every game is awesome. It ages tremendously well, and it's the little things, the control scheme, the very fondly remembered, hammer for a big hitter, stick for a heavy shot, the target for a sniper. It's just, it's amazing. I loved it back then. I love it to this day. If I'm not mistaken, the last NHL game to have Ray Bourque in it as well, at least as an active player. So that's always going to get points for me. Phenomenal game. 20, like I said, just kind of mid. No contest again. Absolutely no contest. A lot of people will overhype NHL 07 because it was the first year of the skill stick. I am here to tell you that game has not aged the way you think that it might. You might fully be on board with the idea of like, oh, NHL games didn't start until the right stick was reflective of the player's stick on the ice. NHL 07 has aged terribly. The gameplay is god awful. The initial version of the skill stick does not age as well as you think. Yes, the idea makes all the sense in the world, but that game has not aged well. Whereas NHL 04, well, I don't want to give away my full thoughts on that particular game just yet, whether or not it be the Heatley or the Sakic cover, but that's not even a competition. NHL 07, it was the start of a new era. I love that it was the first year of, I think, Gary Thorne with commentary as well, which was awesome. My favorite commentator of all time. But yeah, it's NHL 04, hands down. So that is the left-hand side of the bracket complete for the moment. Let's switch over to the right side, and, or will we? Hey, there we go. Nope. Boy, this site just doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. NHL 10 versus NHL Slapshot. I gotta be honest, NHL Slapshot is a mainline game. It is. I feel like that was added in as filler to essentially help fill out this bracket. It's one of those things where, again, this was a Wii exclusive. You had the the little hockey stick that the Wiimote, is that what they called it? I don't remember. That it plugged into. End of the day, though, cool idea, but it's really more of an arcade game. The game didn't even include fighting in a hockey game, which some people would be very happy about in some ways. I don't even know if I'd be that upset, depending on the conversation. But yeah, it's NHL 10. We'll get into more NHL 10 a little bit later on. Then we have some interesting options here as well. It is NHL 96 against NHL 08. 96 is kind of that last hurrah for the Genesis Super Nintendo era. Like I said, there wasn't too much improvement by this point in time. Like graphically, it had taken that bit of a step forward, but that was more so, I'd even argue for like the PC version, or I guess it would have been DOS technically. It's good. It's good. Like that Genesis era of gameplay, you can't really screw with it. But in terms of improvement year in and year out, not so much there. Whereas NHL 08 did start to kind of pick things up a little bit, where NHL 07, what the idea was, the concept of the skill stick. NHL 08, they started to figure it out a little bit. It's also the first year that they had goalie mode as well. Of course, NHL 2K did that in 2K6, so they beat EA to the punch on that. But once EA added in goalie mode, it was awesome. They reworked their dynasty, and I believe it was also the first year of the AHL being in these games. So NHL 08, hands down, beats NHL 06. The OG, NHL PA Hockey 93, EA's first ever title against NHL 13. Now, for some people, this is controversial. For me, it is absolutely not. It is NHL 13. Again, NHL PA 93, solid, gets better with 94, 95. NHL 13 is a game that a lot of people do not like, and it is because there was a drastically different skating system that was a lot more momentum-based. A lot of people, especially people who really enjoy the gameplay of the modern titles that think it's a good speed or somehow still too slow, would absolutely hate this with the true performance skating. But this game was awesome for a variety of reasons. I do think the AI were a little bit better. I know EA touts that every year. I genuinely believe it for this game. I love the skating engine for the idea that you could properly kind of cut and shift your weight balance on your skates. And arguably the biggest thing, let's also not forget GM Connected's in this game. The rating system in this game, and you guys know me for roster editing, the rating system in this game is amazing. And the best way I can sum it up, and I rediscovered this as well, but the best way I can sum it up is right on the Wikipedia side of things. In NHL 12, each player's overall rating is based on that player's role on the team. Playmaker, enforcer, defenseman. In NHL 13, however, the player's overall is based on that player's skill in their position. Imagine. For example, in NHL 12, George Parros was rated an 81 out of 99 based on his role as an enforcer. In NHL 13, Parros' overall rating is down to a 69, nice, as determined by his skill as a forward. EA Sports stated this was a fan-requested change. It was also the year of the stars, so 5 stars, gold, red, and green. I rediscovered that. I meant to make a video about it. Here's the video about it. NHL 13's rating system knocks whatever the hell they're doing for NHL 23 out of the water. My God. Jesus, what the hell is even the difference between these two? It's NHL 21 against NHL 18 with allegedly Connor McDavid on the cover. Big selling point of 21, of course, they continued to make Be a Pro changes, or I should say World of Chell changes. This was the first year that they tried to get Be a Pro into a better spot for the first time, really since like NHL 14. Whereas NHL 18, you got NHL 3s. The defensive skill stick was improved. There were some more dekes. And they added 3-on-3 to Eishel. And hut challenges were added. Just, oh my God. It's like picking between a stab wound and a bullet to the chest. Like they're both just not ideal. Given that Be a Pro is still having its issues in NHL 23, it kind of makes me look negatively towards NHL 21, given that the ideas that they added there still really haven't fully been fleshed out. I'm going to go with NHL 18. I can't imagine either of these games will go too much further. I guarantee you, I could move NHL 13 over right now and it's fine. NHL 16, NHL 17. Here's a super interesting one because there was something that I rediscovered with these games that I had totally forgotten about. Now, NHL 16, they flushed out Be a GM a little bit more, stuff like that. But in terms of major additions, not a ton. It was the first year of like on ice trainer, stuff like that. From my recollection, at least, there was nothing overly huge added to this particular game. It was more so playing catch up from NHL 15 shortcomings. This was getting the game to where it really should have been when it launched on Next Gen. NHL 17, however, took that even further. And in terms of special things for this game, World Cup of Hockey mode from the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, which was awesome. Team North America and such. That's all very much in the game. The other big thing, and there are some others, this was the year that they revamped the Create a Team feature. So as we know it today with the different arenas and stuff like that, players with all the new celebrations and everything like that, they also switched up franchise mode quite a bit as well because of that, which was great. This game sees 14 of 30 teams with their proper NHL goal song. I had totally forgotten about that. That is such a huge thing for me as an offline player to build up that extra level of immersion, is having clubs, whether it's the Ducks, the Coyotes, the Habs, Chicago, whatever, Boston as well, with their proper goal songs in the game. It adds so much. NHL 17, out of all the games that I played, once again, was the one that kind of surprised me, where I'm like, oh yeah, this is better than I remember it. Don't look past NHL 17. I really do think that was, and certainly the best of the Xbox One PS4 era, and maybe still the best game to date that we've seen since. Really weird how they set up this bracket. It's NHL 12 versus NHL 11 next. Now, NHL 12, another controversial, maybe not controversial, but polarizing game in the community. There are people who absolutely swear by this game. There are others that absolutely hated this game. As I've learned, there were more generalized changes in terms of the the modes that were there. This was a big year for goalies being more interactive and goalie contact. If you remember Eagle games of just absolutely trucking certain goalies, NHL 12 was a big, big game for that. NHL 11, the year before it, it was the first year of their physics-based game engine, which replaced the old animation-based system. And again, that will certainly be another polarizing one in terms of people's opinions for it. It was also the year they added stuff like broken sticks and stuff like that. Both games, very interesting to look back on. At the same time, very similar. It's kind of difficult to pick one of these over the other, and I got to be honest, it's a lame duck candidate no matter what. I have fond memories playing both of these games. I also have some not so fond memories of some of these games due to that physics system. But NHL 11, was good in a sense that I've already talked about how difficult some games had in terms of jumping to the next one when they add in new features. I'm going to give NHL 11 credit for actually making the jump towards a new era and doing well in that process. So shout out to NHL 11. NHL 95 versus 06. This is another tough one because, like I said, NHL 94 is the one that you'll always hear mentioned. 95, some people swear by, is even better than 94. For somebody my age, it's got to be NHL 06, though. Like, if you had to make me choose between NHL 94 and 95, I might pick 95. But because it's up against NHL 06, I can't pick 95 in this instance. Again, NHL 06 is just a phenomenal game. And, I should mention as well, the first, the lockout ends, you get NHL 06 back. Crosby and Ovechkin aren't in the game immediately. That they were they were added in via roster update, I should say. But NHL 06 is the culmination of everything that they had been building towards in that particular era with those particular consoles. It is a phenomenal game. And the last one, NHL 98 versus NHL 09. Now, 98 and 2000 were the two, in my opinion, pretty solid games on the original PlayStation. Certainly not a bad game by any means, and it's tough to go wrong when you had the likes of Peter Forsberg on the cover. It's also the first year of national teams because they couldn't get the license for the Olympics, I do believe, of course, which was in Nagano that year. But NHL 09, I don't know, there's just something about that game, and maybe it's just because it's almost like a meme now with Dion Phaneuf being there. But this was the first year of EASHL, essentially, and the massive step forward in kind of where this game went since. I did enjoy NHL 09 quite a bit. Obviously, if you want to talk about how the games were looked at the time, there's a lot of different ways to look at a tournament like this or a setup like this. Again, though, I would go with NHL 09. So that gets us, oh my God, there's so much to this bracket. There we go. That is the setup, obviously cutting off 06 versus 09 in the bottom corner. That is the setup for round number 2. And obviously I won't have too much to add about games at this point because we would have already talked about them quite a bit. NHL 14 versus NHL 03. This is... Ooh, it's a tough one because NHL 14 was another year of a game engine changes to the physics and stuff like that. NHL 14, they switched over to the FIFA Player Impact engine. It was the first year of the Enforcer engine, which is still what we have for fights to this day. That's based off of the Fight Night series, which is very good. It also featured NHL 94 Anniversary Mode, which, whatever. But what NHL 14 certainly has that NHL 03 does not. And I love NHL 03. I grew up playing it a lot. It has Sweetness by Jimmy Eat World on the soundtrack. It's just... NHL 14 has lived the life. The best version of Be a Pro we have ever seen that has not been topped. We got it for 1 year, and then NHL 15 demolished it, and it still hasn't quite returned to the same heights. NHL 14 advances. It's more feature-rich. Again, I love NHL 2003, but it is not the best of that particular era. NHL 94 versus NHL 15. Oh, I might get in trouble here. Because if you ask me which one I'm going to have more fun playing, It's NHL 15. The legacy of NHL 94, 95, and such, they are very, very much intact. They are. They are great games. But like I said, after an hour, two, it's just the same thing. And at the time, amazing. I want to shout out good friend of the channel, Coco Sports on Twitch. He's on YouTube here as well. KOCO, I should mention, who mentioned that he would play this era of games. I believe he was in the Navy and he'd be stationed and it would just be all day like, well, shit, we got nothing to do. Let's just play this for hours and hours and hours and hours. At the time, amazing for what it was. Upon hindsight, playing it modern day, it's not even a competition. So I don't quite know how I want to rank this. But if you asked me, and I guess I have to put it at a base level, right? Like if you ask me, which ones would you rather play? That's really kind of in a sense how I've answered these so far. I can't reward NHL 15 beyond that. I can't. Because of the next gen version, I cannot rank NHL 15 any higher. It got its nod over 19. I can't move it any further because of the next gen version being so feature stripped. NHL 02 versus NHL 23 might end up being controversial for me. But again, 02 has this really weird graphics choice where the cameras, no matter what you choose, it's almost like a hazy effect. NHL 2003, I have probably played more of the game itself over any of the last couple of NHLs, like probably since 20, maybe 19 in an online sense. And, you know, their rosters are tragic, but I'm glad roster sharing's in there. I got to go NHL 23. I think NHL 23 got a very, very favorable placement. Whoever made this bracket or however this is decided, it got a very favorable placement, especially when you factor in like 12 and 11 were paired up with one another. I don't know if it would have made it to the third round had it not been placed against these particular games. I forgot this was the matchup. I hate this. See, NHL 23 doesn't make it to the next round over any of these two games. Spoiler alert for the next round. NHL 23's run's coming to a close. I love both of these games so much. They are my childhood. They are my present. I still love them. NHL 04 goes through. I hate to see that for NHL 01, but there's no choice there, really. So your final four on the western side of the bracket, NHL 14, 94, 23, and 04. Let's go back over to the eastern side of the bracket. Boy, this site, in terms of the scrolling, does not want to cooperate. We can scroll back a little bit more. There we go. NHL 10 versus NHL 08. Bit of a tough choice, this one, I'll be honest. I do think, though, God, again, goalie mode being in, they kind of fixed up franchise mode a little bit. It has to be NHL 10, though. And NHL 10 has a lot going for it. The board play feature was added for the first time. There was technically an intimidation feature, which essentially is described as like, hey, the more you hem someone into their own zone, the opposition becomes antagonized. There was a debate over how much that actually did anything. There was the first person fighting. They made some pretty big improvements to passing. GM mode. This was the first year, if I'm not mistaken, of the phones at the deadline. Not that was NHL 11, and I'm sorry for confusing them, but NHL 10 just has a lot more going for it over NHL 08. Already told you how this one was going. 13 over 18, 17 over 11, no question. And then it is 06 over 09. I mean, this side of the bracket was pretty easy. So we'll scroll over here back to the left. It's NHL 14 against NHL 94. Oh, this is tough. It's tough. NHL 94, one of the most acclaimed games of all time, and NHL 14, which again is viewed positively because of how things have gone with the franchise since. However, God, I have to come back to that. I think I have to come back to it. My God. NHL 23 versus NHL 04. It's not even a question. NHL 04 is going into our Final Four. Again, 23 has a lot going for it, particularly bracket placement. NHL 04. I got to be completely honest. No matter what goes through, it's losing to NHL 04. So we'll give credit to where it's due for 94 over 14. NHL 04 makes it. That's not going to be a surprise to anybody who has heard me talk about these games in the past. NHL 04 makes it to the final from the left-hand side of the bracket. On the right, super tough choice. Super tough choice between NHL 13 and NHL 10. And, God, I'm just thinking about pretty much everything from the overall gameplay experiences. Ask me which one I'd want, though. Because, again, 13 has that very unique skating style to it that only lasted a year. That friggin' rating system is so perfect. 10, though, like I mentioned, has so much going for it. I am going to go for NHL 13, though. 10, again, if that easily could have made it, I mean, it deserves to have been in the Elite Eight. It does. The NHL 10 is a pretty damn strong game. 17 versus 06. NHL 06 is tremendous. And this probably comes down to recency bias. On top of the recency bias, which, by the way, it's funny, if you type in NHL 17 with Tugi there, one of the first thing that comes up is Tugi complains about NHL 17's rosters, which is very, very true. NHL 17's going through. I was really impressed by NHL 17. Or is it? Or is it? They're both good. Both really, really good. I know some people that would be very upset if I don't put NHL 06 through. But like I said, there's just something about 17 that really did impress me. Although, if you go back and play it, it will feel very, very similar to the games we still have now. I want to go with 17 because in that sense, we have a representation of 4 different eras. The only thing that's really missing is the OG PlayStation era, which does not deserve representation in this conversation. I just have to be honest with you. NHL 04 is through. It will be joined by NHL 13 for me. NHL 13 is the one that makes it to the final. 17 had a really damn good run. Again, I love 13 so much. Is it boring? Is it generic to have gone this direction? Maybe. But is NHL 04 the cream of the crop? Yes, it is. It is still the best game of all time. It is still the one where if you asked me one game from this franchise that you can go back and play, it is hands down NHL 04. And again, this is an opinion that can change quite a bit. Once upon a time, 05 certainly would have been picked. Picked over NHL 2003. Once upon a time, NHL 06 would have been a slam dunk to probably make it all the way to the final. To 04, 04 still would have won. But yeah, this is every time, at least once a year, I try to go back and play through most of these just to relive it a bit. NHL 04 is always the one where I sit there and I think, I could just go back and continue to watch this. It still has arguably the best dynasty mode ever. Just for the fact that you have a customizable office, which is hilarious in and of itself. The presentation's phenomenal. It has the best fighting engine that one of these games has ever seen. It just truly has that much going for it. And again, call me person of my time and my childhood where, yeah, for, say, NFL games, probably my favorites are '05. Well, maybe not, actually, but 2K5 certainly up there. NBA Live '05 might be my favorite basketball game of all time. MVP Baseball '04 and '05. You know, I watch a lot of music-related channels, and I want to shout out Finn McKenty in the Punk Rock NBA, who often critiques people who, for music, like, I was born in the wrong generation. I was not. I was blessed to have been born when I was and to experience these games in the order that I have experienced them in, and there can only be one champion. It's NHL '04. With that, I've taken up over half an hour of your time. If you made it through here, I appreciate it. If you just clicked skip to see what I chose by the end of it, you probably should have known what the pick was to begin with. But yeah, let me know your choices. I'm very, very intrigued. I do not expect that I can go through really any of these picks. There will be someone whose bracket is a complete inverse of this, and that is okay. There will be someone who will put NHL Slapshot as the best game of all time, and that is perfectly okay. What is not okay is putting NHL 97 or NHL 99 as the best game of all time, because you'd be wrong. With that, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you want me to do more stuff like this, hey, let me know. I have fun doing, kind of the easier stuff where I can just sit here and rant and ramble forever. Of course, twitch.tv/Tookie24. We're live there basically every single night. Check out the Tookie's Take podcast as well if you want to hear me and two of my best friends talk about hockey sometimes. Mostly, it's a hockey podcast that's not about hockey for the most part. The Tookie's Take podcast right here on YouTube. Just search it, or wherever audio podcasts can be heard. With that, thank you. Love you. Bye. Later. Goodbye. So, see ya.